I asked my best friend to test my boyfriend, thinking it would finally give me answers. But instead, I ended up standing in the middle of a cafe, watching them sit across from each other, like I was the only one who didn't belong there. And what hurt the most wasn't just the fact that they met. It was how natural they looked together, how easy their conversation seemed, like this wasn't something new or awkward or wrong. Like this had already happened before. And in that moment, I realized something that I wish I had understood much earlier. I wasn't walking into the beginning of their story. I was walking in too late. My name is Emma, I'm 27, and up until recently, I genuinely believed I was in one of those relationships that feels simple in the best way possible. There were no constant arguments, no obvious drama, no moments where I felt like I had to question everything. Being with Jake felt steady, predictable, almost comforting, and I told myself that this is exactly what a healthy relationship is supposed to feel like. But the truth is, even the most calm relationship can have cracks that are almost invisible at first. And when I look back now, I can see that those cracks were always there. I just didn't want to admit it. Jake had this way of being just convincing enough to make you trust him without asking too many questions. He wasn't overly affectionate, but he also wasn't distant, and somehow that balance made everything feel real and stable. He texted me every morning, called me at night, showed up when it mattered, and on the surface, there was nothing I could point to and say, this is wrong. But underneath that, there were small moments that did not form a complete picture. Moments that didn't make sense, but also didn't feel serious enough to confront. I started noticing how his phone slowly became something private in a way it hadn't been before. At first it was subtle, almost unnoticeable, like the way he would slightly turn the screen away when I leaned closer, or how he would check notifications quickly and lock the phone before I could even register what I saw. Then it became more obvious, like certain messages that appeared and disappeared without explanation, or the way he would go quiet for hours and come back acting completely normal, as if nothing had happened. And that normal started feeling rehearsed. There was one night that stayed with me more than anything else. We were sitting on his couch, half watching something neither of us was really paying attention to, when his phone buzzed next to him. He picked it up, glanced at the screen, and for just a split second, his expression changed in a way that was so quick it would have been easy to miss. But I didn't miss it. And instead of opening the message, he turned the phone face down, like whatever was there suddenly didn't exist. I tried to sound casual when I asked, "Who's that?" He didn't even hesitate before answering, "Just work." And maybe in a different context that answer would have made sense. But it was almost 11 at night on a Friday, and something about how quickly he said it made it feel less like the truth and more like a reflex. Still, I nodded like I believed him because in that moment, believing him felt easier than questioning everything. Looking back now, I think that was the moment where I had a choice. I could have asked more questions, pushed a little harder, or at least admitted to myself that something felt off. But doubt doesn't work like that. It doesn't come in loud, obvious waves that force you to act. It creeps in quietly, making you question your own instincts before you ever question the other person. So instead of confronting him, I started paying attention in a different way. I began collecting moments, small details that didn't mean much on their own, but together started forming a pattern I couldn't ignore. The way he smiled at certain messages but never opened them in front of me, the way some names never appeared when he scrolled, the way he seemed slightly more guarded every time I got too close. There was never anything concrete, never a single moment I could point to as proof. But it was enough to keep me awake at night, replaying conversations and wondering if I was missing something obvious. And the worst part wasn't even the possibility that he might be lying to me. It was the feeling that I was the only one who didn't know the truth. Like I was standing in the middle of something everyone else could already see clearly. The only person I allowed myself to talk to about it was Lily. She knew everything about me, every relationship, every mistake, every insecurity I had ever tried to hide from the rest of the world. And more importantly, she was always the rational one. The one who stayed calm when I overthought things. The one who never rushed to conclusions. I remember sitting across from her, trying to explain everything without sounding dramatic, without turning my doubts into accusations. "I don't have proof," I told her, almost apologetically. "I just feel like something's off, and I can't explain why." She listened carefully, not interrupting, not reacting too quickly, just taking it all in like she was trying to understand something deeper than what I was saying. "Then don't accuse him," she said finally, her voice calm and confident. "Not without something real." And hearing that made me feel relieved in a way I didn't expect, because it confirmed what I wanted to believe, that I wasn't crazy, that I just needed clarity. But then she tilted her head slightly and added, almost casually, "There are ways to find out." I looked at her a little longer than I meant to, because something about that suggestion made me hesitate. It wasn't that I didn't trust her. It was that the idea itself felt like crossing a line I wouldn't be able to uncross. "I could text him," she continued, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "Nothing obvious, just see how he reacts." My stomach tightened almost instantly, because as simple as it sounded, something about it didn't feel simple at all. It felt like opening a door that might lead to something I wasn't ready to see. I should have said no. I should have trusted that uncomfortable feeling in my chest and walked away from the idea entirely. I should have either believed him or accepted that I didn't. But instead, after a few seconds of silence, I heard myself say something that would end up changing everything. "Okay, just do it." And that was the moment everything started falling apart. I just didn't realize it yet. At first, it really did feel like a harmless idea, almost logical even. If there was nothing to hide, then nothing would happen, and I would finally be able to quiet that voice in my head that kept asking questions I couldn't answer. And if something did happen, then at least I would know. That's what I told myself. Lily didn't rush into it. She said she'd keep it casual, nothing obvious, nothing that would make him suspicious, and for a moment, I actually felt grateful that she was being careful about it. Like she understood how fragile this whole situation was. The first message she sent him was simple. Just a reaction to one of his stories, something neutral enough that it wouldn't raise any red flags. And when she showed me the screen, I remember holding my breath without even realizing it, because that was the moment everything became real. He replied. Not immediately, but quickly enough that it didn't feel like chance. Just a short response at first, something polite, nothing you could call inappropriate. And I felt this strange wave of relief wash over me, like maybe I had been wrong all along. Maybe I had overthought everything. Maybe this was going to prove that I had nothing to worry about. But then the conversation didn't stop. It kept going in a way that felt easy, too easy. There was no hesitation in the way he responded, no confusion about who she was or why she was texting him, just a smooth, almost natural flow, like he was used to talking to someone new and figuring out exactly how to keep their attention. At first, it was still harmless. Small talk, a few light jokes, nothing serious. But I noticed how quickly his tone started to change, how the messages became just a little more personal, a little more intentional. And that's when that feeling came back, the one I couldn't ignore anymore. He's just being nice, I said out loud, more to convince myself than her. Lily didn't answer right away. She just looked at the screen for a second longer before typing again. And then I saw it. The first message that crossed the line. Not in an obvious way, not something dramatic or clearly inappropriate, but enough that it shifted the entire meaning of the conversation. A compliment that felt just a little too personal. A tone that didn't belong in a harmless exchange. My stomach dropped in a way that was slow and heavy, like I was realizing something I had been trying not to see. Because it wasn't just what he said. It was how easily he said it. Like there was no internal hesitation, no moment where he thought, I shouldn't be doing this. I think that's enough, I said quietly. And I meant it that I didn't need to see more. That one message had already told me more than I wanted to know. But Lily shook her head slightly. Let me just see where this goes, she said, her voice calm, almost curious. Just a little more. Something about that didn't sit right with me. Not because I didn't trust her, but because suddenly it felt like I was no longer the one deciding where the line was. Still, I didn't stop her. And that's when things started moving faster. His replies became more frequent, more engaged, like he was leaning into the conversation instead of holding back. He asked questions now, not just responding, but actively keeping it going, showing interest in a way that felt deliberate. And every time my phone lit up with another screenshot from Lily, I felt that same mix of anxiety and disbelief tightening in my chest. At one point, I caught myself staring at the messages longer than I should have, analyzing every word, every pause between replies, trying to understand what part of this was real and what part one had imagined. He doesn't even know it's you, I said. And as soon as I said it, I realized how empty that sounded. Because somehow, that didn't make it better. If anything, it made it worse. Because this wasn't about him recognizing her. This was about who he was when he thought I wasn't watching. And that version of him felt unfamiliar. I don't remember exactly when the conversation crossed from uncomfortable to undeniable. There wasn't a single dramatic message, no obvious turning point. It just shifted. Slowly, quietly, until suddenly there was no way to pretend it was harmless anymore. And the worst part was, he didn't hesitate. At some point, I realized I had stopped hoping to be wrong. Now I just wanted it to stop. Lily, seriously, that's enough. I said again. This time more firmly. We got what we needed. She didn't answer immediately. Her fingers hovered over the screen for a second before she typed something anyway. And that's when I felt it. That small, sharp moment of discomfort that didn't quite make sense yet, but was strong enough to stay with me. Because suddenly, this didn't feel like something she was doing for me anymore. It felt like something she was continuing. I pushed that thought away almost instantly. Because questioning him was one thing. Questioning her didn't even feel possible. But even then, deep down, something had already shifted. And I think that was the moment when I stopped being part of the plan, even though I didn't realize it yet. At first, I tried to convince myself that everything was still under control. That even if the situation had gone further than I expected, I still knew what was happening, still had access to every message, every detail, every step of that conversation. But that feeling didn't last long. Because slowly, almost imperceptibly, things started to change. Lily stopped sending screenshots as often as she did before. At first, I told myself it was nothing, that maybe the conversation had slowed down or there simply wasn't anything important to show. But then I noticed how her replies to me became shorter, less detailed, like she was summarizing instead of sharing. It's just small talk, she would say. Nothing new. And every time she said that, I felt that same uncomfortable pressure in my chest, like something wasn't adding up, but I couldn't quite prove it yet. Can I see? I asked once, trying to sound casual. She hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. I deleted some of it, she said quickly. It wasn't important. That didn't make sense. Not really, but I nodded anyway because at that point, I wasn't ready to confront what that hesitation might mean. I kept telling myself that I was overthinking. That after everything we'd already seen, it wouldn't make sense for her to hide anything from me. That she was doing this for me. But something had shifted. And I could feel it. A couple of days later, She texted me first. He asked to meet. I stared at the message longer than I should have, reading it over and over again like maybe if I looked at it enough times, it would feel less real. What did you say? I replied. I told him no. She answered almost immediately. I said it's not a good idea. And for a moment, I felt relief. Not the kind that makes everything okay again, but the kind that lets you breathe just a little easier. Like maybe, even after everything, there was still a line that hadn't been crossed. That's good. I wrote back. Yeah, she said. I think we should stop this. That should have been the end of it, but we had our answer. He crossed the line and we saw it. We didn't need to push any further. But for some reason, it didn't feel finished. Not because of him, because of her. I started noticing things I couldn't ignore anymore. The way she would check her phone, and then lock it quickly when I was around. The way she seemed slightly distracted when we talked, like part of her attention was somewhere else. The way her tone had changed, not dramatically, but enough that it no longer felt like we were sharing the same situation. It felt like she was ahead of me, and I hated that feeling. One evening, we were sitting together, and she left her phone on the table for a second before stepping away. And I don't know what exactly pushed me to do it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was frustration. Maybe it was the quiet realization that I was no longer being told the full story. But I picked it up. I told myself I was just going to confirm what I already knew. That I would see the same messages she had shown me before, nothing more, nothing new. That this would finally quiet everything in my head. But the moment I opened the chat, I knew I was wrong. Because there were messages I had never seen. Conversations that didn't match what she had told me. And then my eyes landed on one line that made everything else fade into the background. Same place as last time? I read it once, then again, and again. Because my brain needed a second to catch up with what that actually meant. This wasn't a plan. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't the beginning of something. It was a continuation. My hands felt cold, but my thoughts were suddenly very clear in a way that scared me. She didn't say no. She didn't stop. She didn't tell me the truth. They had already met. And whatever this was, it had been going on longer than I thought. I put the phone back exactly where it was, trying to make it look like I hadn't touched it. Even though my heart was racing so loudly, I was sure I wouldn't be able to act normal when she came back. But somehow I did. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask questions. I didn't confront her, because in that moment, I understood something important. I didn't need more explanations. I needed to see it for myself. And that's when I decided I was going to find out exactly how real this was. I didn't ask questions. I didn't confront her. I didn't even give myself time to process what I had just seen. Because, deep down, I already knew that no explanation would change what I felt in that moment. I just needed to see it with my own eyes. The next day, I told her I was busy. I said I had plans, something work-related, something that sounded believable enough for her not to question it. She didn't push. She didn't ask for details. And somehow that made it worse. Because it felt like she didn't need to. I already knew where they were going. I had seen the message. I knew the place. And the entire way there, I kept telling myself the same thing over and over again. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe last time meant something else. Maybe they hadn't actually met. Maybe I was about to embarrass myself over nothing. But the closer I got, the quieter those thoughts became. Until there was nothing left but this heavy, sinking certainty. I walked into the cafe slowly, not even sure what I was hoping to find. Part of me wanted the place to be empty. Part of me wanted to be wrong. But I wasn't. They were already there, sitting across from each other, like they had planned it, like they had done it before. And for a second, I just stood there, just watching. Because what I saw didn't look like a first meeting. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation, and no careful distance. They weren't trying to figure each other out. They already had. She laughed at something he said, leaning slightly forward like she already knew how he talks, how he jokes, how to respond. And he looked comfortable. At one point, he reached across the table and touched her hand. Not carefully and not uncertainly, but like it was something that had already happened before. And that's when it hit me. I didn't catch them starting something. I walked in on something that had already begun. For a moment, I thought about turning around and leaving, pretending I never saw any of it. But then she said something that made me stop. You always order this, right? She smiled when she said it. And he smiled back. And just like that, every last doubt I had disappeared. Because that wasn't curiosity. That was familiarity. That was memory. I took a step forward, then another. And suddenly, I wasn't watching them anymore. They were watching me. The shift was instant. The moment broke. His expression changed first. Surprise, and then confusion. Then something else, something closer to panic. Hers was different. She froze, but not shocked, not completely. Just caught. So, I said, my voice calmer than I expected. This is the part where you tell me it's not what it looks like? Neither of them answered right away. And in that silence, everything felt louder. Jake was the first to speak. It's not, Emma, it's not like that, he said quickly, standing up like that would somehow fix it. But I didn't look at him. I looked at her. Because in that moment, I realized something I hadn't fully understood before. He betrayed me, but she chose to. You told me you said no, I said quietly. Her lips parted slightly, like she was about to explain, about to say something that would make sense of all of this. I didn't think it would go this far, she said. And for a second I almost laughed. Because that was exactly what I had said at the beginning. I asked you to test him, I replied. I didn't ask you to keep going. It just happened, she said. But nothing about what I was looking at felt accidental. Not the messages, not the lies, not the way they sat across from each other like this wasn't new. Nothing about this just happened. Jake tried to step in again, his voice louder now, more desperate. It didn't mean anything, he said. And that was the moment I finally looked at him. Because somehow, that was the worst thing he could have said. Not because it wasn't true, but because it made everything feel even smaller. Like what we had didn't even matter enough to stop him. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't ask for more explanations. Because I didn't need them anymore. Everything I needed to know was sitting right in front of me. So I just nodded once more to myself than to them, and took a step back. I think I got my answer, I said. And for the first time since this started, I felt something shift inside me. I felt neither anger nor sadness, just clarity. I turned around and walked out without waiting for them to follow me, without looking back, without giving them another second to explain something that didn't need explaining. Because the truth was already there. I thought I was testing him, but in the end, I tested both of them. And somehow, the person who hurt me the most wasn't him. So now I'm wondering, if you had to choose, would you rather be lied to by the person you love or betrayed by the person you trust the most? If stories like this hit you, subscribe.